In order for us to examine where things started to go wrong for the Niners in 2024, we have to go back to a moment that a lot of fans want to forget, but sometimes you have to relive a painful moment to start to heal. It was one of the most turbulent and frustrating moments of the entire season, and it hadn't even started yet. Let's take a trip all the way back to 2018 when the New York Jets used their first round pick to draft a young quarterback by the name of Sam Darnold 3rd overall. The Jets had hopes that he would be able to help their team turn their franchise around, but as we all know, that didn't happen, and Darnold would end up moving around the league until he found himself landing in San Francisco in 2023. That was, of course, 2 years after the Niners traded 3 first-round picks to take another quarterback 3rd overall, Trey Lance, who was drafted because their starting quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, was no longer effective due to the many injuries he had sustained throughout his time with the team. Unfortunately, Lance suffered a season-ending injury at the beginning of 2022, leaving Garoppolo the only option to become the starter. And unfortunately for Garoppolo, he would suffer a season-ending injury late into the season, which required the Niners to rely on his backup. A backup that they happened to have drafted in the last round of that season's draft. We all know the history of what happened after that, but let's talk about a part of the season that I never really paid attention to, the offseason. Because it was during this first offseason of Purdy's first year that I believe showed the first crack in the armor of the San Francisco 49ers. During the 2022 offseason, Deebo Samuel requested a trade in order to secure an extension with the team or get his money elsewhere, and he did it publicly. When the deal was eventually signed, fans made comments on the fact that Deebo appeared to be out of shape. I have no comment on that simply because I wasn't a fan of the team at the time, and I'm not in any position to comment on the shape of a professional athlete. However, Samuel's production noticeably declined in 2022, although he did end up missing 3 games after his injury in Week 14. But just to compare, in 2021, he had a total of 15 touchdowns compared to just 6 in 2022. But there is an explanation for that. That being the fact that Christian McCaffrey was brought in Week 7 and immediately took a lot of the production off Samuel's plate, amassing a total of 14 touchdowns in 14 games, 5 receiving, 8 rushing, and 1 passing. After the season was over, Purdy would spend the offseason rehabbing his injury that he suffered in the NFC Championship against the Philadelphia Eagles. This left Trey Lance as the de facto starter once again. However, the 3rd overall pick in 2021 would have some competition from the 3rd overall pick in 2018, as Sam Darnold would be brought in to take part in a quarterback competition. When it was determined that Brock would make a full recovery, the competition would then become for the backup position. But something else was happening in the offseason that could end up potentially harming the team. That being the fact that Nick Bosa was up for his contract extension and he was holding out. Unlike Samuel though, his lasted the entire offseason, which meant he missed camp and signed the deal with only days left until the regular season began. But that wouldn't be the only thing that happened in the offseason that upset fans, as Sam Darnold won the competition and was named backup to Brock Purdy. Remember that crack I mentioned earlier? It got a little bigger after that because the Niners would eventually trade Trey Lance to the Dallas Cowboys for a 4th round pick. Portions of the fanbase, especially those that believed in Lance, were enraged. To them, Lance was truly never given the chance to show what he could do on the team. And to that I say, I don't blame them. He was never given a fair shake. However, to those people I would say this. Remember back to media week of the Super Bowl, where Kyle Shanahan, perhaps after one too many drinks, admitted to the world that during training camp of 2022, he realized that neither Jimmy Garoppolo nor Trey Lance was the best quarterback they had. It was Purdy.
Well, it's funny to hear Jed say that because it wasn't the smartest moment I've ever had. I mean, when an owner comes in after training camp practices and is like, hey, how's the quarterback? And what he means is the starter. Yeah. Or the second, and you in irritation go, I don't know, but our 3rd guy's the best.
Trey Lance was never going to get his starting job back because the Niners had a better quarterback. But I think it was too little too late in certain fans' eyes. The Niners front office had messed up so badly. It didn't matter that the Niners struck gold when they drafted Purdy because Purdy's arrival had basically pushed the whole Lance fiasco under the rug, at least to the media. What made it even worse, though, was that Lance was replaced by Sam Darnold. However, while getting to the Super Bowl could alleviate some of those pains, losing it brought up a whole new set of issues. Which brings us to the offseason of 2024. If a holdout in 2022 and 2023 wasn't bad enough, this offseason started with two holdouts, Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams. Now, we will be diving into the ramifications of those two holdouts in the next few episodes, but for right now, let's just say that Purdy was not able to practice with his main target. All of that chemistry that they had been building up throughout the season was quickly dissipating, but that wasn't even the worst of it, because one of Purdy's other main weapons, the reigning Offensive Player of the Year Christian McCaffrey, was dealing with a mysterious calf injury that didn't seem to be healing. We'll go over that later. That left Purdy with two main weapons. Deebo Samuel, who was coming off of a weird year that had fans calling his effort into question, and George Kittle, who had to have core muscle surgery after the 2023 season. For all of the people that tried to dismiss everything that Purdy did in 2023 because of his weapons, think about this. His main weapon, holding out and not practicing. His second weapon, dealing with a calf injury that kept him from fully practicing. His third weapon, nowhere near the level he once was. And his fourth weapon, dealing with core surgery, which meant he couldn't work out during the offseason. And then we get to the 2024 draft, in which the Niners drafted a wide receiver in the first round, something that, once again, part of the fan base didn't agree with. Not only did that first round rookie deal with an injury during minicamp, which didn't allow Purdy and him to develop any chemistry whatsoever, he was also involved in an incident that could have ended in tragedy. Thankfully, there was still one other weapon that Purdy had at his disposal. The only problem? To anyone who didn't know about him, all he ever was a receiver that was mainly used for third downs. Luckily for Brock, that man proved to be one of his most reliable weapons he would have for the entire season. He just didn't know it yet.